Welcome to Build Video 3. Now that we've finished putting in the tail feathers and the tail servos and push rods, we're going to install the motor and put on the cowling. Here, while assembling the prop adapter, remember with any metal-to-metal connections to use blue Loctite. The prop adapter went onto the front of the motor where there is no shaft. The X mount goes on the back of the motor where there is a shaft. We'll put on a wheel collar after we install the X mount. Use the taper-headed screws with blue Loctite and install on the back of the motor. Locate the wheel collar for the shaft, remove the set screw, put on blue Loctite, and reinstall on the shaft. Do not remove the circlip, put the wheel collar on top of the circlip and tighten. The motor is ready to install. These are the 4 installation bolts for the motor that come in the kit hardware package with a washer and blue Loctite. Install the motor. Notice how the wires go to the lower airplane right. Remove the speed control from the package and connect to the motor. At this point, it does not matter which direction or which order you put the wires in. Connect to the receiver and bind your receiver to your radio. We're going to check the direction of the motor travel or motor movement. If the motor turns backwards, as it does here, to the right, we'll reverse any 2 wires to make the motor turn to the left. After you're happy with the direction of the motor, we're going to pull apart the connections and add heat shrink to the 3 wires going to the motor. This will keep them from pulling apart in the air due to vibration. Here we are putting in a zip tie through the holes in the motor box for the speed control. I'm going to add Velcro to the motor box and the speed control as a little bit of a cushion to keep it rubbing from directly on the wood. We will put the heat shrink side down to keep from damaging the components on the wood part of the motor box. You'll also want to make sure that the capacitors at the end of the speed control are not rubbing on the firewall or any part of the motor box. After you're happy, secure the zip tie on the speed control, tie up the wires to where they're out of the way and cannot get into the motor or the prop. Do not snug them down so tight because over time vibration will wear through the wires, but you want them snug enough to keep the wires from flopping around. Cut off the ends of the zip ties and get ready to install the switch. Here I'm heating up a sharp knife to cut out the switch hole in the fuselage. There's one on each side. It's up to you which side you decide to put it on. It's easier to put it on the aircraft left side if the speed control is also on the left side. Putting blue Loctite on the screws for the switch, which come in the aircraft hardware package. There's also a washer on each screw. And we'll just put the switch through the hole and tighten it down carefully. Now we are getting ready to install the cowling. We're using masking tape folded back over itself to create a way to mark where the cowling mounting tabs are. If you stick it to the fuselage up over where the cowling mounts to the fuselage, we'll be able to mark it with a pen so we can later come back and drill exactly where the cowling mounting tabs are. We will need to use the spinner backplate in this operation as a means to determine where the front of the cowling should line up when we are finished. Here we are marking the tabs with a Sharpie. You just want a small dot that's going to show you where to drill into the tab after the cowling is put on the airplane. Insert the cowling onto the aircraft with the tabs of tape pulled out of the way. Install the back plate with a prop and tighten it down by hand. Using your fingers, hold the cowling in place around the spinner back plate. Determine your gap. Make sure it's about 1/8 of an inch or less to the back of the spinner back plate, and start with a piece of tape across the top of the cowl and canopy junction. Then hold it in place again and put a piece of tape on the side of the canopy and the fuselage on both sides. Check the gap from 360 degrees around the airplane to make sure that it's even. After you're happy with the gap, go ahead and run tape all the way around the cowling to fuselage junction. I also like to use a little piece of tape on the bottom of the spinner back plate and the cowling to keep the cowling from settling as you drill the holes. At this point, you're going to fold the tape tabs down over the cowling and drill through the Sharpie marks. The drill that we are using here is small enough that the self-tapping screws that come in the hardware package will be able to bite into the cowling mounting tabs that we are screwing into. After the holes are drilled, remove the prop and spinner back plate and all of the tape that you put on to hold the cowling in place. It's important when you're pulling tape off of covering to pull it back gently so it doesn't pull up any covering. We're now going to remove the cowling and drill out the holes in the cowling side slightly bigger so that the screws passing through them won't bite into the cowling and will only bite into the cowling mounting tabs. We're going to reinstall the cowling with the screws loosely after we've put on the spinner back plate and the spinner. We're just putting in the screws loosely at this point to determine that we drilled the holes in the correct place and everything lines up exactly like we want it. So if you're happy with the spinner gap and the cowling mounting, what we're going to do is go ahead and pull out one screw at a time, hit the tip of it with a very tiny amount of thin CA, and screw it in to the cowling mounting tab. The CA will help set the threads into the mounting tab. If you put too much on here, it is possible to glue the cowling to the airplane permanently, so you want to use as little as possible. You don't need to over tighten the bolts. Just tighten them down to where they touch the cowling and then maybe 1/2 turn further. Please proceed to build video 4.